All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad you could join us here. And looks like Naftali just joined. Naftali, welcome to the show. Let me go ahead and bring you up to co-host here. Uh, looks like we're both running a little late, which is great. Perks of having a newborn, I guess. But nah, God's good though. God's good. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and open up in a word of prayer here. Father God, I just thank you for this great day. I thank you for this opportunity that we have just to speak life into people. I thank you for anybody that listens. I speak life and blessing over them. That your spirit and your presence would fall onto them and lead them and direct them in their paths. Yeah, we ask these things in your name. Um, so, yeah, it's been a fun week. Kind of took off last week, sort of. We did a little in-person interview with a friend of ours named Creed. We're hoping to publish that here pretty soon, and I think he's going to hopefully join us here in the future once he finally gets around to creating an X account. Let me just go ahead and adjust my little microphone setup here quick. Oops. Okay, that should be pretty good. But yeah, anyway, so today I think it's appropriate to talk about something that's, I think, slightly controversial, but I think it's very much needed to be discussed, and that is the topic of homeschooling. And I'm seeing a lot of posts on X of parents or employers who are praising how, and I guess how productive homeschool students are, how they are basically very cutting edge, and I think what's really fascinating is that the world we're moving into, which is going to be more technology based, is really primed to be a powerhouse for parents who are able to homeschool. And I think the caveat is that most parents, most families, I should say, aren't going to be able to do it. The stats is that less than 20% of families have a parent stay home. So we're talking less than 20% of families have the ability to homeschool if they want to. And I would guess the majority of the reason behind that is due to finances. And so this is down significantly from a couple generations ago, where it was over 50% of families had a stay-at-home parent to kind of raise the kids. So, but why I would say homeschooling is going to be important moving forward is that unless the public school system radically changes, they're going to be pushing curriculum and material, and even just a mindset that is severely outdated, and I would argue borderline useless in the upcoming world. With the introduction of AI, I think everything changes as far as the economy, and so what used to be the most valued positions, which was doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. In a couple years, those positions are going to be very much different than what they are today. It's possible that we see lawyers, the need for lawyers essentially drop off the face of the earth, as AI will be able to pretty much type up all the legal documents that you need done, and it'll be done in a minute as opposed to days, and cost you nothing as opposed to thousands of dollars. And so there's not really any need for lawyers, or at least there's going to be very little need. Doctors, there's a really interesting guy who is very tech savvy, and he's also a doctor though, and he is a CEO of a startup healthcare company that's aiming to take on the major healthcare system, which is really awful. Not that the company starts is amazing, but the healthcare system's awful. And he had an interesting post and said that the amount of people who are going to not go to the doctor due to AI, like he said, doctors aren't going to believe the numbers, like as this gets better and better, the amount of people who are going to skip going to the doctor because they can just ask AI and it will be able to basically diagnose what they're feeling and what their symptoms are. And so it's kind of the next step in evolution. And so that's obviously going to greatly decrease the cost and the need there for people in this doctor's office to a certain degree. So that's I'm trying to kind of underline the fact that two of the most prized positions in America traditionally are basically going to the wayside to the point where AI is going to be able to do it better and for free. And so, if you're a student, you probably don't necessarily realize this, and you might still be studying, a variety of topics that you're not interested in, that don't pertain to you, and quite frankly, aren't really valuable to you. And that's kind of, to a degree, what what the school system is. But I think moving forward, there's gonna be homeschool kids who breeze through the curriculum. It's very common to see parents say that their kids that are homeschooled can do a day's worth of school in about 2 hours, and which leaves about 6 hours for them to basically explore what interests them and build their skills. Go out, get a job maybe, or shadow somebody with a job, or literally just study AI, figure out how to use AI, learn how to program, to code, how to build video games. So many opportunities, and I think that kids who are homeschooled, who are driven, who have a passion, who have something that they want to pursue, are indeed going to have a crazy advantage over those who aren't able to be homeschooled. Because at the end of the day, if you're sitting in public school for 8 hours, I'm not trying to be rude, but I think a majority of that time is not well spent. And I say that just because, like, I'm not trying to throw shade at any teacher, but I am trying to say that I think the whole school system that we've set up is kind of a disaster. As in, it's not necessary for students to study stuff that they're not interested in and they don't want to learn. And so, if kids don't want to learn, it's not really worth forcing them to try and learn, because they're not really retaining anything. So yeah, we built this whole system that's kind of focused around everybody should do good on all these basic subjects that are useful for life. But the reality is, a lot of that stuff is just gonna go kind of to the way of obsolete. Anyway, Naftali, I'm curious on what your thoughts are on this, because we've talked a little bit about this, but I'm curious, what do you see the future of education? How do you see homeschooling? Um, and how do you see homeschool changing? How do you see parents utilizing the time and the ability to homeschool? And do you agree that this is going to be a luxury, as less and less families are going to have the ability to live on a single provider income?
Yeah, I think it's about a change. I think when you use the word the luxury, I think there's two options with that. I would say three options with that, and it will be more of a luxury, but it'll also be more common. And I think if we use wisdom, we can start working on the infrastructure and use it to our benefit, because these homeschools and these co-ops are the future. So 2 days ago, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a doctor, and his kids are homeschooled, and he's a doctor of education. So he has his degree in education. Actually, he was a garbage man, and he was working as a garbage man with a doctorate degree because it paid more, because he has a doctorate degree in education. And so he left that and he finally got a job in education as a garbage man, because he was working crazy hours, and his wife was like, "Hey, bro, either you're gonna go get a regular job. I know this job is making us a lot of money, but go get a professor job." And so he did, but he's a very strong advocate for homeschool. And even though he works in corporate and public domain, his main focus is getting education with homeschool. And then I have another close friend of mine. We're doing some music together. He just sold his business. He had homeschool, which was like a wild school. And a lot of these are very expensive. Some of these are 20, 30 to 50 grand to 100 grand a year. But he was charging ridiculously cheap, because he's a Christian, and he calls himself a bad salesman. So he was pretty much making nothing. Like, so he had to go get a secular job. He had it for a couple of years. He did that full time for a couple of years. And it was really powerful. I think he touched a lot of kids, helped a lot of kids, and he owned his business, and he had land and did this curriculum, showed kids how to forge, how to build things with wood, how to do art. He had an art program, like actually painting, not just like high school curriculum art. It was like teaching kids how to paint professionally. The music was amazing. He was teaching kids how to play banjo and all these crazy kind of instruments, and they were doing all of this unique kind of artistic things, and it was actually giving them a usable real life scenario. He was teaching them how to forge for mushrooms and food. And that me and Sarah, before we met them years ago, probably before Anna was even born, Sarah was like, nah, I don't want our kids to go to a wild school. Kind of like, it's a homeschool program that they do in Seattle, but it's ridiculously expensive. And it's not a full 8-hour a day. It's probably 4 hours and sometimes 2 hours. And it's based on like a homeschool system almost. And so speaking to him of how education is changing, and I think the bad part was that both of those guys had been in education in the past as we know it. But in the future, that's creating one of the greatest opportunities. So I think mixing the homeschool organic system with technology and AI is actually going to make for the perfect ingredients, because it's going to beat the mainstream education system, which has been here for 100 years. So let me explain. For the last 6, 8, 10,000 years, whatever you believe, everybody believes different. I'm not going to get into that, but we've been on Earth. Schooling has been, your father teaches you a trade, and if you learn another trade or how to read or how to write, you go here and you learn for so long. We've got away from that. We've made such a system to make people slaves to money, make people slaves to the system. Schools do not create entrepreneurs. So if you learn how to fix stuff, you learn how to become a creative. If you learn how to build a house, if you can teach a 12-year-old how to build a house, you can teach them how to make money. So think about the Amish, how much land they own. You know, they're taught not to be borrowers, the Amish. And so I think one of the key factors is that they train their sons and their daughters how to bake, how to cook, how to work. You might see a 10-year-old boy during school hours helping his dad construct a barn. And I've seen that many, many times. Even when I was a garbage man, I would see that right on the back of the garbage truck. Amish families working on roofs, doing construction jobs with Americans, and then have their kids right there with them. And that's the best education. I think if a roofer taught his kid how to do that, which might be illegal to most Americans, but the Amish do it. Think about that. What if they were 19? I actually have a friend like that who was 19, and he was making 10 grand a month doing roofing. And the kid was 19. And he was faster and better than me. And I was a construction guy too. I worked with roofs with this guy. And he was 2-3 times faster than me. But he was roofing with his dad since he was 14. But he was making 10 grand a month at 19 years old. And so when you can do that, it's an education that's priceless. And we're going into that paradigm now. It's a Wild West. But I think if we make it a formula, it will destroy that system too. So if AI comes and overpowers that, it will destroy it. I think it's a mix. It's a mix of using AI. It's a mix of using computers, touchscreens, technology, coding, software writing, movies, video games, music, entertainment, mixed with the organic of what type of food to eat. You're not taught that in high school. You might be taught a little bit about photosynthesis and a little bit scientific stuff, but it's not going to help you in your everyday life. And you might learn math, but it's not going to help you. It's not going to teach you how to deal with numbers. A lot of mathematicians and people who are geniuses in math A lot of those people do not know how to do business math. They're getting a paycheck. If they started a business, they probably go broke. They probably would have to go to an accountant and get stuff worked on because they don't know a real life scenario, but they know everything about algebra. They know everything about geometry, but they don't know basic economic math. The system is broken. My sister in South Africa had a high school class just on math called economics. In America, they might have an economics or business class, but it's got nothing to really do with business, how to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't have anything to do with real math. What's $50 plus $50, and how do you make that exponentially grow in your bank account? What's a CD? How do you grow that in your CD? How do we write checks? How do we do bank accounts? What's bad credit? What's good credit? They don't teach you that in America, but Chinese students know that. Some European students know that. African students, some really good private schools in Africa teach economics. And so by the time those kids graduate and they go to colleges in other countries, they go to those colleges and they start businesses and they become billionaires and millionaires. And so that's something that we're not talking about. The American education has been broken, and it's been broken for 100 years. Most people will disagree. They're like, back in the day, they did this, they did that. The system was made to fail. It wasn't like any other system, this American and European system. But even the Europeans are doing better than the Americans. And so I'm not against the American education system. It's just really broke.
Yeah, man, good thoughts. I agree entirely with that. And I'm optimistic that that change is coming. And I think it's fascinating if you look at the what you would call or consider successful, wealthy people in America. A lot of them probably did not do very well in school. One of the guys I learned a lot about real estate from, he drives around a Porsche with a license plate that says C student. This guy's probably, he's either worth hundreds of millions or he's a billionaire. And he's he's probably worth more than his entire class combined, which is crazy to think about. But I'm sure in school he was not uh, expected to do much in life. I have another friend who literally was told by a teacher that I went to school with that if you don't get a college degree, you'll never make more money than I am. The teacher told him that. And fast forward today, I think he's only 25, and he's currently making double what she makes. And he got into the trucking industry, got a CDL, and worked his way up. Now he's running a terminal. So, it's a very interesting world, and I think it's all changing. I think education changes too. There's actually a school in I think Austin, Texas, that is implemented AI, personalized learning, and I believe they are the number one school in the nation currently. It happened pretty quick. Like they were shocked at how rapidly they rose the ranks, just because, as it turns out, AI can take everything down to a personal level, and so instead of the whole class having to be at the same place, they can literally just go at their own rate. And there's an assistant there to kind of help if they get stuck. But for the most part, AI is able to customize lesson plans and teach them at their own pace and their own rate. So it just goes to show where we're going to. And I think a lot of people are resistant to change, but those who are resistant are going to get left behind significantly. Um, so yeah, great conversation, great chats around homeschooling. I'm excited to see what happens to it. I mean, it's a very unfortunate scenario because I do also know teachers, elementary teachers, and the level of the cognitive ability of a lot of kids today is really concerning. As in, like, kids in third grade not being able to do basic addition. What does 4 plus 4 equal? And so that's kind of where we're at. We're spending an arm and a leg on our kids per capita. I think it's around $14,000 per kid, and the results are getting worse every year. So there's some serious problems, and at some point you have to really question what's going on because it doesn't seem to be working at all. But anyway, let's go ahead and pivot into something else I thought was pretty cool from this week, which I sent to you. There's a influencer who's a big Bitcoin advocate. Her name's Isabella. I don't know her last name, but she posted a really cool video. I guess she lives in Mexico, and it was kind of. I think the title of the video had to do along the lines of our is moving out of America, moving away from America, the greatest decision you can make. And so, I watched the video, and it was really interesting. She did a great job with it. Talked about how the food quality is exponentially better in these other countries. How it's real food. It's not fake food. It's not poisonous. It's not the population's not addicted to drugs. Over half of Americans are on prescription drugs on like a regular basis. So, you know, I think what I ended up gathering from all this, though, um, is that the American dream has changed. I mean, the traditional American dream, in my opinion, is very much dead. Which is that the next generation has it better than you, meaning that if our country was still based on the gold standard, which meant that if you had a dollar today, in a year or two that dollar would actually be worth more than is today, because when backed by gold, your currency is stable. That means the price of stuff doesn't go up. As innovation increases, the price of everything gets cheaper. And we see it in some degree. Look at flat screen TVs, for example. They've gotten super cheap. And that's how everything should get as innovation increases. But the problem is that the money's so broken that it's actually backwards. And so, as we get more productive, the cost of everything still goes up generally. So that's it's really the underlying problem. But assuming we were still on the gold standard, um, if the American dream was alive and well, every generation jobs should be paying more than the previous generation, meaning that maybe instead of making your dad made $15 an hour and you get a job, similar job, you're making $18 an hour, $20 an hour, and that amount of money goes equally as far. Or, I mean, doesn't go equally as far, but every dollar goes equally as far, or further, I should say. And so, you look at like, for example, in China, how how they're now actually the leading exporter of cars in just a couple years, of all the countries, probably almost combined. They've innovated electric vehicles so good that they've gotten the price of a new electric car down to like 8 grand for a decent EV. Whereas in America, the price of cars goes up and up and up every single year, despite innovation increasing. All that to say is that if you look at the American dream, does each generation make more money than the previous generations? Are homes more affordable? If the American dream was alive and well, then more people should be able to afford homes. Homes should generally, they should be nicer, they should be bigger, and they should also be cheaper. And more people should be living in homes. There should be more stay-at-home parents. The food quality should increase. People should be able to consume more, live a higher quality life. XYZ. If you look at all those things, the reality is that they're pretty much all lies. The only one you could argue about is Americans consume more. And we do consume more. The problem is we just consume a lot of very low quality goods, a lot of low quality food. Take eggs, for example. If you buy a store-bought egg from these warehouse chickens, vitamin D levels in a store-bought white egg is about, I think it's one eighth the amount of a free-range chicken. And so what I'm trying to say is that eating one free-range chicken egg would be the equivalent of eating 8 store-bought warehouse chicken eggs, as far as nutrition levels, at least with vitamin D. And so, the truth is that at this point in America, everybody should be able to find a really good job without any kind of college degree. They should be able to eat all organic food. They should be able to buy a very nice house with one parent working, single income, and they should be able to do that very comfortably, own a nice car, maybe two cars. But the truth is that a lot of people in my generation can't do hardly any of that, and that's why a bunch of them still live at home. So, um, all that to say, the American dream, in my opinion, is very much dead. And I think that there's a new American dream that's surfaced and is kind of trending amongst influencers. And the new American dream is basically to accumulate enough money or Bitcoin in America to the point where you can actually just move your family out of America somewhere else, somewhere where the cost of living is a fraction of where it is here and the quality of life is significantly higher. And I find that really interesting because whenever you have the smartest and the brightest people basically saying, okay, I don't want to live here anymore. This country is poisoning me with the food. It's brainwashing the kids, the children. The wealth inequality is out of control. Whenever you get to that point in society, your smartest people will leave, and they are leaving, which means that you know I don't really know where you can have future hope because you need the smartest and the brightest to be here. And for generations, we've seen the smartest and the brightest move here from areas like China, Singapore, and whatnot. But I think there's now a trend reversing, and so from people I listen to and hear, the smartest people are actually moving to Asia, and they're moving to maybe South Africa. Maybe some are going to South America, but there's this ginormous migration, in my opinion, and I think the amount of people who are um, I would say young people who are not happy with America is at a very high rate, and I think it's increasing, and I think they have very good reason to be where they're at. But in my own position, I'm looking at places like Japan, saying, "Wow, these people their average income is like half of American, but yet they're happier. They live a much healthier life. Their life expectancy is significantly higher. I think their healthcare costs are around a fourth or a fifth of America." And so you start asking yourself these questions, and eventually you get to the point of, is it even safe to raise kids in America, considering our food system is so poisoned and everything's so corrupt that the politicians and the corporations literally sacrifice our health and well-being for the sake of profits. You really have to ask yourself, do you want to live in a country that does that, or would you rather move to a country that has morals and doesn't worship greed and profits, and where community is the focus? And so in my opinion, I think the nations that are more centered around community and the well being of the citizens are actually going to thrive. And I think the demise of America is inevitable at this point, sadly. I don't see things turning around. And so I just think that's an interesting trend. I think it's interesting that more influencers are going that route. But Naftali, do you see similar trends? And in your opinion, what is the American dream, and what would you recommend that Americans do if they want to um, revive that dream and bring it back to life?
Well, for me, it's tough to speak on because I am South African and I necessarily don't have an American dream. For me, it is a South African dream. I really want to go back to South Africa, buy a home in South Africa, run businesses and mission bases. I can probably do more in South Africa than I can do in America. It's more affordable to live. The food is more healthier. Every American person besides one has said that the food is 100 times better. The beef is better. The lamb is better. The corn is better. The corn is actually good for you. In America, corn is known as a bad food because of the GMOs and also because it's non-beneficial. But in Africa, it actually makes people stronger. The Zulus eat corn and they almost get ripped by eating corn. It's almost the opposite. These people are not in the gym 24 hours, but they look like they're from the gym, but they eat corn. And say same thing with the Dutch. The Dutch in South Africa eat corn. They eat it every day. The Zulus and the Dutch, and so that those are cultures in South Africa. And rice. They eat rice and corn, and these people get It's like they're eating steroids because but it's all natural. That's natural. Actually, what happened? I remember back in the day they would sell mangoes from South Africa. They stopped selling it because it was a weight loss supplement. So health companies started buying it and started making it into vitamins and protein because people would lose weight eating the mangoes. In America, the countries where they get it from, they go and manipulate that in South America, and some of those South American countries are eating healthy mangoes, but there's a lot of corruption in the food market in America. And so for me, it's a South African dream. But for Americans, I don't think it's dead. I think you have to really go for business in America, and I don't want to say greed, but almost you have to have that mentality in America to survive. I think in the future, unless you're thinking outside of the country, and a lot of millennials and some Gen Zs are starting to move out of the country. I have a friend from the UAE, and he moved here. He has an engineering degree, but he's not doing that. He's actually doing a minimum wage job because it's tougher in America to do what you can. And in the UAE, he was working for actually a South African company, but a high recognized company in the UAE. So in America, it's definitely tougher. I mean, he came on a word from God, not necessarily because he wanted to. And I think a lot of people are doing that now. They come into America because I think there's an assignment drawing them to America, not because it's easy. And so I think if you want to follow the American dream, either you have to really become ravenous in a negative way and focus on getting wealthy, or you have to go to another country. And you can probably live there almost on minimum wage because a lot of those countries, people get $1 a day, $2 a day. Another thing I want to emphasize, America only has 350 million people. In Asia, there's 4.5 billion people. In Africa, there's 1.5 billion people. In China, there's 1.5 billion people. In India, there's 1.5 billion people, billion with the B. So when we demonize China, we don't realize that we are demonizing a people group. That's evil. That's wrong. It's wrong for us to demonize somebody we do not know or think because maybe we disagree with 5% of the people who have bad policies. There's 1.5 billion people. So we don't know how that country is. But if there was right people and righteous people to step into the government, of course those countries will accelerate 10 times more than America because the population is 10 times more than America. So think about that. If Europe and not Europe, but if Asia and Africa has 6 billion people, just those two continents have 6 billion people. If you were just to stay in those two continents, which are very close to each other, and to do business in there, there's more of an opportunity in Africa as a business person and to live a dream or live the Asian dream or the African dream. You actually have a higher chance. I mean, if you're free to go, unless God has an assignment for you in America. But let's just say you didn't have an assignment in America. You probably have a better opportunity in Africa and Asia as a person because you don't have that much competition. You can take something, you can go and not have an education and go over there and start a school. Go start education, start making money with trade over there. There's greater opportunities over there because there's more people, there's less competition, and the infrastructure is less modernized. So if you go there and you start building homes in a place that looks like a desert, all of a sudden the infrastructure goes up, and you can do it at a tenth of the cost of America. In South Africa, you can build a $500,000 house, probably about 80 grand, 90 grand. I'm talking about modernized everything, electricity, probably even windows, doors. It will look either better or the same as a $500,000 house in America for $80,000 in South Africa. So to me, the dream of the American dream is I don't want to say is a lie, but it was you get the white picket fence, the big single house, the family double car garage, you retire, you buy your Porsche. That's either the American dream or, like Ryan said, his friend is 25 years old, pushing a Porsche against his teacher who had to wait till he was 70 years old to buy his Porsche with his retirement and his 401k and his investments in the stock market. And so and it's no offense because I have a lot of older mentors. Most of my mentors are all in their 70s or 80s or 60s. I go to older mentors naturally because they're way more wiser than me. But there's something that those people are doing. And a lot of my entrepreneurs have investments in Africa. One of them, their family members, actually all of their family members, including their children, lived in South Africa. One of their family members lived there for over 40 years and planted 50 churches in South Africa, 40 churches in Lesotho. So you're talking about people that's been in Africa, people that's already been in Asia. He had family members in Germany, family members in Asia, family members in Europe. And so these are American-born people. So I'm not, and these are extremely wealthy people. So I personally believe we are told this is an American dream, but the wealthy people, people with business, this is the last thing I'm going to say, Ryan, about that, is people with business, they're not investing in America. Trump isn't investing in America. He just built $1 billion golf course in the UAE. So don't get confused with the American dream. The rich Americans who are living the American dream, quote unquote, are not invested. They haven't. I would say they probably haven't invested in America for 100 years. They invested in Cuba. They invested in Puerto Rico. They invested even in American states. One is called Hawaii. In America, it's an American state. But a lot of the ultra rich either invest in those countries, and secretly they invest in Delaware. Delaware is where they have all their companies, and then they also have California used to be it, Los Angeles used to be it, and that was, I would say, 15 years ago. Now it's being Texas and Florida, and it's soon, I think, becoming Pennsylvania. So we have to really use wisdom of what we think this is, because we could be wrong. Don't trust me. Go do your own research. Don't even trust anybody with an education. Do your own research. Don't trust me. Don't trust what we're saying. Go and do your research. Google the numbers. There is 4.5 billion people in Asia. You have a better chance in Asia than you do in America. I'm in America because I'm on an assignment. But I know I can make money in India. I know I can make money right now. Doing what I'm doing right now, which is with creativity and video and AI. I mean, I'm not messing with AI, but the people around me, my wife works with AI. So the people around me are going to do that. I like the analog stuff, and that's going to make me more valuable. And that's going to make those kind of people more valuable. Two types of people is going to get more valuable. People working with technology and AI, and people doing it the organic, holistic, old school way. People farming the old school way is going to make it. And people farming with hydroponics and computers are going to make it. Those are the two. If you're in the middle, you're going to fail. I guarantee you're going to fail, because you're not going to be strong at either or. And so partner with somebody who's 100% organic, and if you in AI, and that's how you're going to live the American dream. And all of them are doing that, if you think about it.
Yeah, great stuff, man. Great thoughts. Agree entirely as well. And yeah, I think, like you said, everything, it's all changing, And I really think it's interesting, even corn, like you said, in South Africa. I think if more people really understood what was going on, there probably would be a revolution in this country. It's pretty amazing how well they've covered up everything, and we've just become normalized with being sick all the time and being on prescriptions and everybody being unhealthy. But the truth is, as Americans learn more and more, and I think they are starting to learn more and more, and we are seeing some progress. I think RFK is starting to make more stipulations for the medical companies. I think he's going to do subsidies for organic farming. And so as we see those things start to come around, I truly believe that there is a possibility for I would say there's a beacon of hope in that aspect, and so I hope it goes well. Unfortunately, when you're battling these companies, my thoughts are probably they're too strong already. And so, I have a feeling that we're just too far gone in this country, that we've given too much power to the mega corporations, and they're in bed with politicians. And so, that's the exact reason why you saw JFK get killed. It's a power play. And so, American politics are as corrupt, maybe more corrupt than most places in the world. So whenever you have that going on, it's very difficult to break. But to kind of move on to a final topic here, the company MicroStrategy, which basically is borrowing money, giving out or taking loans from corporations to buy Bitcoin and other treasury, just announced that they are raising an additional $84 billion, $84 billion to buy Bitcoin. And, at some point you have to really, especially if you're skeptical on Bitcoin, it's fascinating to me that people still are. Because you literally have a corporation with a guy who's been a technology CEO for decades, extremely intelligent, and he literally decided to just he dug deep and determined that Bitcoin is the best bet that his company has and that corporations have and business have because the dollar is just devaluing so intensely. So he is going all in, raising as much capital as he can, and they already accumulated, I believe, $42 billion. They're sitting on $42 billion worth of Bitcoin, I believe, and his plan is to buy another 84 billion. But what you have to realize is that he's not just going to the bank and racking up credit card debt. Like there's every time he buys Bitcoin off of these bonds that he services, it signifies that there's actually a lot of interest out there from different markets, corporations, whoever it may be. There's nation funds who own a significant share of MicroStrategy, which is the company. So there's a huge demand for Bitcoin for big players, and I think a lot of people are completely missing that. But if you're a company and you're able to raise $84 billion to buy more Bitcoin, it should signify that we're still very cheap. Not financial advice on this show, by the way. But the price of around 100K is in many significant players' eyes is very cheap. Gary Cardone, who is the twin of Grant Cardone, he's a major Bitcoin bull. He said on a show this week that he believes MicroStrategy's bet on Bitcoin is going to be the greatest trade of the century. And so whenever you have big players like that making statements like that, I just don't think you can ignore it anymore. And so, it's necessary for you to dive deep and study Bitcoin relentlessly and try to understand what it is, because most people can't wrap their heads around it because they've been brainwashed so deeply into believing that the dollar is valuable, that it has value. But as you start to study the price of things from gold to real estate, I believe the dollar's lost more value than people give it credit. And that's my whole thesis as to why the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer, because the cost of living is going up, raises are not going up near as much, and every year it's going to get tougher and tougher to make ends meet. And so, meanwhile, the rich they'll continue to get richer, which means they can buy more of the assets. And so, Bitcoin's, in my opinion, one of like these. It's probably the biggest opportunity, as well as some crypto, for young people to get an edge in life, because I don't see how a young person today is going to ever be able to retire if they do, if they basically follow the traditional finance rule of thumbs. I did a really interesting video this week, and I literally broke down the numbers. The price of a new house in America is around $500,000. And for a lot of cities, that's cheap. Like, people think $500,000 is expensive, but like I actually just saw another article this week that basically said over half of the metro areas in America, a starter home is now over $1 million. That's over half. And obviously, if you want to make good money, you're probably living in one of those metro areas. So, $500,000 is the average price for a new home, which is half the price for a starter home in many metro. But even using the factor of $500,000, I did the math, and if you were to start today with $0, and by the year 2030, if you want to buy a new home, if you want to save up a down payment for the home, I believe, based on the appreciation of real estate and the trend, it's been growing at around 6.5% per year. So by that time, 2030, when you're ready to buy a new home, the cost of a new home is going to be $720,000 ish. And if you start saving up today, each month you'd have to put aside, I believe it's $2,300 a month. And so if you do that for about 5 years, you'll have enough money for your 20% down payment, which, by the way, is what most traditional finance people recommend, which to me is mind-boggling because I don't see how anybody is going to be able to come up with a down payment on a house because house prices just continue to increase rapidly. And so if they are growing at 7% a year and the average home price is already like 400 grand, this isn't for a new home, this is just the medium price home. 400 grand with 7% of 400 grand, it's 35,000, no, $28,000. So every single year that you save, you actually not only have to let me explain another way. If you wanted to save up for a down payment on a home, every single year that down payment or the price of your home is growing by $28,000, and so what is 20% of $28,000? It's 5,400. So every single year that you continue to save up for that down payment, not only is the home price you're going to buy increasing, but the down payment you have to save is increasing. So you have this hurdle rate of about $5,500 per year, which is almost $500 a month every single year that you have to jump over. So the first year it's extra $500. Next year it's $1,000. So now you have to your hurdle rate's 1,000, meaning that the first $1,000 that you save per month basically gets wiped out based on home appreciation. So you have to basically continue to fight that growing snowball to save a down payment. So all that to say, I don't see how anybody can come up with a down payment of 20% anymore. I don't think it's realistic unless you're investing money and you're able to beat that snowball of about 6.5%. But if you're just saving cash, I think you're hosed, and I think a lot of people are in that position. They've been saving up a house for years. One of my neighbors, he's young, he works a pretty good job, and he's been saving up for years, living at home. And he finally just said, you know what, I give up. He's getting married, and he tried to buy a house, put in offers, got outbid on every single one. Said, I can't afford it, I'm just going to rent. And so he moved out and he got a place and he's renting, and he gave up on home ownership. So that's kind of where they're at in America. You work a good job, you work really hard. The fact is, you still can't afford a house. And at least in my community, I see it more and more. Two-parent working households, and they're going to be renters for life because they just can't catch up with it. They get a 2 or 3% raise, and the price of a home jumps 6.5%. So, not to mention the cost of everything else jumps more than 2 or 3%. So, since COVID, heck, my utility rates jump probably 28%. You average that out, it's like, man, you can't get ahead anywhere. And that's kind of what we're facing. And so, all that to say, if you don't know, if you don't buy Bitcoin, if you don't understand Bitcoin, I think that's the most important thing that you can study right now is understand why it's needed, understand how broken the money supply is. If you think Trump's going to fix the problem, unfortunately, you're wrong. The Republicans are raising the debt. I think we're at like $36, $37 trillion right now. It's actually theoretically impossible to pay that money back, and so we're just living on borrowed time. And the interest expenses alone are skyrocketing. So, a lot of people, I think, live in this. They live in an alternate reality. They just believe that America's not going away, that it can't lose. But if you look at the numbers from a realist position, there's no hope. There's no hope, really. The only way America can make a recovery is if they abandon the dollar and they go on a Bitcoin standard, which I think is fascinating. There's no way they pay back their debt. There's no way that we grow out of it. At this point, we're pretty much we're pretty much, in my opinion, hosed. I think we borrowed to the point of no return, and that should be concerning. And so if you're an American, I don't think you can just ignore it because life is going to continue to get rapidly harder. And you can study nations that have taken this path. Just look at Nazi Germany. It's probably the easiest, most well-known example. I mean, we're probably I would say, in a worse position than they are after they lost the war as far as their debt ratio. And so, hyperinflation happened over there. It happens around the world. It's actually happening here, depending on what you consider it. But in my opinion, a debasement of 8% a year is pretty darn close. So, but we're at that point, So, but that's kind of my final thoughts for the week for the show. Really important, once again, study Bitcoin. Watch my video if you haven't on home ownership. It's on my page. I think it's titled "Will Young People Ever Be Able to Afford a Home?" But you guys have to think about this. A lot of people, like I said, they're blindly saving money, thinking they'll have enough for a down payment. But the truth is, you know, I think you'd be making a big bet if you say home prices are going to come down, especially in areas like the Pacific Northeast where the price is still around half of what it costs to build a new house. So yeah, that's my thoughts there. And off to Lee. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to share regarding that? Regarding Bitcoin? Regarding if you're young and you want to afford a house, I mean, would you recommend trying to come up with a down payment? Would you just recommend borrowing 100% of the loan just to get a house to get in the game? What would you recommend a young person do? Yeah.
My comment for a house is find a cheaper location. Not necessarily a cheaper location where there's no opportunity, but I think Pennsylvania right now, we're doing the research, Sarah and I. Pennsylvania has one of the best opportunities just because a lot of even the people from New York have left and went to Westchester in Philadelphia, and a lot of their people can't afford homes there, and so they're moving out here. And so I've met some people from that area that moved out here. Yeah, so I would say if you're a young person, go ahead, take a chance. Partner or go live with your parents. I would say if you're married and you're young and you don't have any opportunity, go live with your parents and serve. It's okay. Like, we can live with family and build community. Help your dad with his business. Help your mom if they don't have a business. Get a business started with them in mind and your kids in mind. I think we need to start thinking family, community, and legacy. As long as it's a healthy environment. I mean, as long as they're not doing anything illegal or anything dark, I would say focus on building community or partnering with a brother. Live with your brother and your sister. If they are healthy people, I would say only on those terms. If they're unhealthy and there's issues, of course not. But if you have a good family somewhere or even a good friend and you can trust them and there's borders and boundaries, that's a whole nother subject. Yeah, I would say that would be my advice to a young person. And then second, with Bitcoin, it's going to continue to rise, and if it ever comes down, it's going to go down, and it's going to rise again, and it's going to continue to go down and rise up again, and there's going to be great opportunities, and people are using it for money. Some people are using it as an investment. So I think with Bitcoin, it's going to continue to be Bitcoin, and right now it's the standard in crypto. Every millionaire, whether it's Trump, whether it's Elon, every billionaire and millionaire have some type of crypto. I would say probably 70% of millionaires and probably about 90% of billionaires. So follow the signs. Don't listen to financial advisors. Don't listen to us. Go do your own research. Find out what are these millionaires doing. There's only two areas they actually really invest in, and that's crypto and that's real estate. And they're actually telling you not to invest in real estate, some of them, and they're only buying more real estate. And that's so funny because the same people that's telling you not is buying real estate. And I think that's what they're doing. They're telling you to invest in crypto because it's going to keep going up. They're going to tell you to not buy real estate because there's a limited amount of real estate. And especially in America, real estate is actually short 500,000 homes in Pennsylvania. Actually, more than that, but that's for like regular residency. It's probably like 400 to 500,000 homes, probably around 700,000 homes short in Pennsylvania. So I think there's a lot of stuff that I would do pertaining to that is researching Bitcoin, researching real estate. And then the final thing is a question for you before we end, Ryan, is you talked about education, but I think your main concern for education is you just had a baby and you are thinking about that as a parent. but I want you to come from a business standpoint of view. Right now, the education system is broken. Homeschooling is the Wild West. Nobody knows what it looks like. What's your opinion as a business? Because I know somebody personally, which you met this person in December. She doesn't have a teaching degree. She doesn't have anything with education. She started a homeschooling her kids. Now she started a full-blown school in Texas. And that person's going to be moving to Pennsylvania soon. So in my opinion, I want to ask you, what's the future of the business side of education and how you think people can get involved? How can we start a business with education? Because I've seen it happen in Texas, not just from the video you're talking about, but also from somebody we personally know and you've met, that this is definitely possible and it's scalable. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I actually had I started brainstorming like a solution to the town I grew up in because they're having some financial hardships. Insurance premiums are jumping, I think, 18% because of GLP-1s, and they're already pretty deep in the hole. They're not doing well, I should say. Um, and I was just brainstorming, if I could run for like mayor and transform the town, what I would do. And I had a really interesting brainstorm session because, I would basically turn into a Bitcoin town where everybody that works in the area for the district, whatever, their retirement would go into Bitcoin. The town would mine for Bitcoin using cheap electric rates. They actually have the cheapest electricity rates in the state, which is crazy. And so if you start mining for Bitcoin, you start building a Bitcoin reserve, and you start allocating a percentage of all taxes to Bitcoin strategic reserve. I think that's step number one. Step number two would be there's a ton of farmers, and farming is a dying industry if you do it the way that the government wants you to do it. And so I would actually try to revive farming. I would basically implement a farmer's market and in town, and I would basically offer any farmer that does organic farming, I would make all of their property tax basically obsolete. So if you're an organic farmer, you don't pay property tax. Essentially subsidize them as much as they can to get healthy food. And they sell direct to the community, meaning that the community benefits from cheap organic grown food that they don't have to go through the supermarkets to get, and also drives people from the outside in. But then the step number three would be the school district, which is, like I said, under money. And I think honestly, what I would do, it would be extremely controversial, but I would honestly probably cut anywhere from 30 to 50%, or actually probably 50 to 70% of the staff. I would leave 30 to 50%. And we would go full blown into the AI hybrid learning model. Also abandoning the state funding. Bringing organic, healthy food into schools, making it Christian based. So there's, Bible classes, and there's time for prayer, which I think a lot of people would appreciate. But this is basically the answer to your question. I would go hybrid AI with teacher learning. And, you just basically train the teacher how to use AI, how to get it to give you the information that you need, because it can teach you pretty much everything you need to know. If you can't figure out how to do a formula, just ask it. It'll show you. It'll give you step-by-step explanation better than a teacher can. And so if you can combine technology, AI, with good, they don't have to have a degree, but as long as they're smart, intelligent, and they love kids, and they can use technology, that's who your teacher would be. I would also push for healthy organic food lunches, and I would also push that it is Christian based. And I think a lot of parents, they would pay, a fair amount of money. You don't even have to charge that much money. You think if you have 10 kids in the class, they could be different ages, and you have one assistant. If each person's paying, $8,000 per year, you could basically have $80,000 for a class of 10, and figure out how much you want to pay your teacher. Maybe it's a 5-hour school day, so your teacher's actually more part-time, but you pay them generously. and the students will probably run laps around public school students. And you hire somebody to be a cook who cooks organic food, good, healthy, wholesome food. I think a lot of parents would jump at that pretty intensely. So that's kind of where I would go if you want to make money in education. I think there's a high likelihood that that's where we're going, and so it's just a matter of doing the legal, whatever you want to call it, to get. I mean, maybe you could just take a test. Maybe you could just test out of school. Maybe that's all that's required. I'm not entirely sure how the homeschool thing works. I know you have to pass some kind of exam, but I mean, if you could set it up under a homeschool umbrella and, basically teach the kids the basic stuff that the state requires and then dive into more personalized learning for the interests, I think that would be insanely profitable. And I think that, there's been talks with people I know about doing something like that, not with AI, but just in general. A lot of people are looking to get their kids out of public school just because it's not really, they just aren't a fan of the curriculum that they're being taught and the stuff they're being pushed. So, I think the best things that we could do for our schools is to get the state and the government out of them. So, but yeah, for your friend coming up, I'm actually interested in getting to know her and hopefully helping her succeed because I want to see more of that. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of people put their kids in Christian school for the Christian perspective. So I think if you had the best, you want to strive to be the best, and so I think that you could do it using AI. It's been done already, and so if you can market yourself as the best school in the county or the best school in the state, we're Christian, and we feed our kids real meals. We teach them how to be business leaders. Like I think people would actually honestly consider moving to the area just to put their kids in that school. And I think that's something that we need to look into because parents actually do research schools before they move. That's a big factor. And so, if you put your school in Davidsville, I mean, it's already a popular area, but somewhere like Davidsville, Boswell maybe, I think the results are going to be fascinating. So that's the direction I would go with it. Great question, though. I'm excited to see where we end up and how your friend does. But any other closing thoughts before we end the week out?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think we have to start, like you said, collaborating with those people who are going to be running the education system because our kids are at risk. I mean, so I think making money, and I don't think you need education. You can even be a high school dropout. I mean, I wouldn't go that far to say do that, but I mean, somebody could be a high school dropout and be a billionaire doing homeschooling or AI schooling. So that's just my last comment.
Yeah, good point. I mean, if I'm a business owner and somebody applies to my job and they're a high school dropout, I'll probably interview them. To me, like there's more value in being a dropout than there is in finishing. Just because, through my personal perspective, I just believe that college and education traditionally is genuinely about worthless. And so, if you drop out and you're self-taught, self-educated, like people that read books because they enjoy reading books to learn, those are the people who you want to hire, not people that just force themselves to learn. They get a degree, which I would say is 95% of the people with college degrees. And so, to me, I have more interest in looking at and hiring people without college degrees because I think that they're probably more skillful and they're smarter because they didn't spend money to go to college to get a degree that's not worth anything. So, it's just a mindset shift. I think you're going to see more and more of that, not necessarily from corporate America, but from innovative companies and small startups. So, but yeah, good thoughts there. Go ahead and close out with that and off. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming on. Good chats as always. And we will see you next time.
See you next time, bro. Peace. Much love. Blessing. Peace.